just ask that your work in us would be done, that you would finish what you started. Thank you that we can gather together and just declare praises to your name. And Lord, as we look at the story of Moses together today, I pray that by your Spirit you'll reveal life and truth and hope to us all. Speak to us where we are, but don't leave us there. Bring us where you need us to be. We give you this space, we surrender, we consecrate this time before you. Just ask that your will would be done. Pray these things in the wonderful name of Jesus. Amen. Morning, everybody. Please grab a seat. Welcome. I see a lot of new faces, a lot of familiar faces, so welcome back for those if it's your first time back with us for the new year. My name is Brian, and I'm part of the team here at South Perth, and I do some work over at Curtin University as well. And as a church community, we're going to be, for the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to look at some Old Testament characters. We're going to, at the start of the year, we're going to go back to the beginning, back to the Old Testament to see how God was revealed through the characters, through their stories, and how he worked. You know, it was God working. It wasn't, he was using humanity, but it was his plan that he was unfolding. So today we're going to look at Moses. Children, there's some activity books up the back, and you can follow along with us. On the back page, there's also a map. So as I talk through the story of Moses, follow along on your map and see if you can see the different stories. Now, many of you will know the story of Moses if you've been in church or you've seen a movie or two. The story of Moses is pretty common. But today we're going to really fly through it. So scriptures will be on the screen, but if you want to turn anywhere, turn to Exodus. And we're going to skip along and pause at a few moments. But my hope today is that you'll be encouraged by the way that God uses Moses. Moses, a fallen, a broken human, full of weakness and faults, yet his God Yahweh, works through him. That God Yahweh is the same God that we serve today. The God who revealed himself in Jesus, the Son, and who lives within Christians by the Holy Spirit. You with me? It's going to be good. So before we start, we need a little bit of context for Moses. Moses doesn't start our Bible. Our Bible starts off in Genesis, and the story of the Israelite people of the Hebrew nation starts with Abraham. Abraham is called by God. That promise, called into a promise of a nation of people and a land. That promise is then reconfirmed through his children, through Isaac and through Jacob, but then gets derailed a little bit because Jacob's children and descendants get stuck in Egypt for about 400 years. They start there just as commoners, but they end up being slaves to the king Pharaoh, who fancied himself a little bit of a god. And so this is where Moses' story starts. He's a slave baby born into captivity at a time where Pharaoh didn't want any more male Hebrew. So his family had to hide him. For as long as they could, about 3 months. And when they couldn't hide him anymore, they put him in a basket and pushed him down the river. But God worked, and Pharaoh's daughter picked up the basket and adopted Moses into her family. So he went from slave baby who couldn't be born, the impossible child, to being raised in the royal household. When he was fully grown, he had to flee. He had to run away to Midian because he killed an Egyptian. And so just in his life already, we have a lot of drama. It's enough for a movie. Being born into captivity, then being elevated into the royal household, running away, having to start a new life, and raising a family, becoming a shepherd. It's a good story. But that's just where God picks him up. That's the beginning of Moses' narrative. So would you read with me in Exodus, the call of Moses? God calls him out of obscurity into a divine mission. And we're going to read together from Exodus 3 up on your screens. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that although the bush was on fire, it didn't burn up. So Moses thought, I'll go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I've indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now the cries of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. If we keep reading, it says, Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. And this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are going to say to the Israelites. The I am has sent you. There's so much in that little story, the Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush. But I really just want to focus on the relational aspect, the way that God interacts with Moses here. Moses is aware that this is a divine encounter. You know, he recognizes that this is a God he is facing, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he follows obediently. Yet, when God calls him to his mission, he's hesitant. He's reluctant. And God gives an answer. Not only does the God who is the almighty creator of the universe answer a mere mortal, but he gives an answer with a name. And we miss this in our modern Western thinking because names to us are just what we call people, how we get their attention. But to the ancient Near East, a name denoted everything, denoted your personality, your character, your reputation, your authority. That was all carried within your name. It was how you were related to others. So when God says to Moses, I am who I am, he's making a statement that there is no one else like him. He is far above everyone else. He's making a statement that he's existed for all time. This is a powerful name, and the I am has sent you. The God of the universe has now reached out, seen the perils of his people, and he's going to work to release them. He's going to use Moses. It's not just sending a messenger, go do this for me while I sit back. But no, the God of the universe has a personal encounter with Moses. And this is simply amazing. This is not something that Moses or the people would have been expecting. And so it's the thing that really stood out to me. Our God, the God Yahweh is the third person of I am, so it means he is. Yahweh is a personal God, a God who met Moses at the burning bush. So Moses raises some obstacles, some challenges, and God works those through with him and eventually sends Aaron along with him. And Aaron and Moses go off to see Pharaoh, see the king, and to petition the king to let the Israelites go, to let them go to worship Yahweh. But Pharaoh doesn't listen to them. He rejects their proposal, as we read in Exodus 13. I've jumped ahead. He refuses their request. It's because he doesn't recognize who God is. He doesn't know this God, I am. He has his own pantheon of gods. And so he's not prepared to submit and to bow down. So God uses signs and wonders. Children, do you remember the 10 plagues from Kids Church? He sends his power against the people of Israel to prove that he is the all-powerful God, that he is the I am. And finally, after the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh relents and lets the people go. He actually tells them to get out quickly. So the 10 signs and wonders reveal God's power. They reveal his ability to act even through people who are opposed to him. But then Moses has got a whole group of people, and they've left Egypt, they've left everything they've known for 400 years, and now what? What do you do? Well, God thought of that. He went with them. By day in a cloud, by night a fire within a cloud. Exodus 13 talks about this. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, so they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Our God guides us. He guided the people of Israel, and he guides us today. They traveled for a little while, and they hit a sea. In the meantime, Pharaoh is woken up to the fact that he's lost his labor force, so he chases after them. And so the Israelite people are stuck between a sea and an army. They're in a pretty desperate place. God comes to Moses and says, I'm going to do something else. Moses, raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. And that's exactly what they did. So God performs yet another miraculous act to deliver his people from an army. Once on the other side, with the army swept away, the people continued to travel. But the honeymoon period was over. Just 1 month in, the people were grumbling. They're saying, remember what we used to have back in Egypt? We used to have meat. We were slaves, but we used to have plenty of food. And so they were grumbling to Moses and to Aaron. Yahweh's response was to send them bread from heaven, the manna, and quail, so that they were provided for. It was God's provision to sustain them whilst they're in the wilderness. But they didn't learn anything, because a little bit down the track, they got thirsty. And so in Exodus 17, we read that the people are really upset with Moses. Exodus 17 says, Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. The Lord answers Moses, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and the water will come out of it for the people to drink. So God has provided for them time after time after time, and he's using Moses. Moses, the one who he has a relationship with, who is listening to him and who's obedient to him. But not only did God set the people free and provide everything they needed, he elevated them to become a priestly nation, to become his people. Many of you will know the story of the Ten Commandments, but Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus lay out a whole lot of other laws where God sets these people apart. He says, live like this in order to honor me. He sets the people apart to be his royal priests, to be a nation, to be a beacon of light to the other nations around them, to represent him on earth. Moses, as the leader, he was the one who was speaking to God, and he was the one tasked with forming them. So he copped it. He was in the middle between God and the people. And so he's undoubtedly a great leader, but as I was looking at the story, I see that Moses is just following God's instructions. Up until last night, I planned to take the message off in a slightly different direction to talk about holiness and the tabernacle and how it was fulfilled through Jesus and some stuff out of Hebrews and Peter. But it just struck me the actions of God and the actions and response of Moses. So we're going to look at that together. So God, or Yahweh, these are some of his actions. They'll come up on the screen. He's personal. He came, the creator of the universe spoke to a man, told him his name, and sent him off on a mission. He chooses to work through people. He could have done it however he wanted to, yet he chose to work through Moses. He knew Moses' history. He knew Moses had killed a man and fled. He knew that he was living in exile. He knew these things, and yet he still chose to use Moses. Numbers 12, verse 8 tells us, this is God speaking, with him, being Moses, I speak face to face. I speak clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. So Moses has a personal relationship. Not only does he reveal himself personally, but he's present with them through the cloud and through the fire. He goes before the people, leading them at every stage of the journey. He doesn't send them off to do something, but he travels with them. He's powerful. Time and time again, he miraculously delivers the people, whether it's the plagues to show his power to Pharaoh, or to part the Red Sea, or to provide for them when they're hungry or when they're thirsty. He is a God who can provide, but he is also a God who is powerful. And through it all, we see that he's holy, that he is set apart, that he is the God who is above every other God, above every person in all of creation. And yet, he is a God who's chosen a people. He stepped towards them and he gave them their nation status as priests. So he's a merciful and graceful God as well. So this is the God Yahweh. This is the God of the Old Testament. Yeah? But we serve the same God. Yahweh, who Moses would have worshipped, is who we call God the Father, who revealed himself through Jesus. And after Pentecost, you have the Spirit living within us. So we have the same God. So all those characteristics, that he is personal, that he is present, that he is powerful, that he can provide, and that he is holy, they all continue on to us today. So what was Moses' response? Moses did some great things for God or with God. What was his response? Well, at first, his context was pretty bad. He was in exile, nowhere near the land, and he was reluctant. He was hesitant. He made up a list of 5 excuses why it shouldn't be him to go and set the people free. But once he got on board, he was obedient. As you read through Exodus, it said, God said to Moses, Moses did it. That was the relationship. Moses had a tremendous trust in God, a tremendous dependence on God. As the people squabbled, he just obeyed. And he was committed. It's pretty tough when you've got an entire group of people who are angry with you. Pretty tough when you go, just a month ago, God did these amazing things, and now you don't want to know anything about me or God. You have a very short memory. Yet he saw the goal, he saw the purpose, the prize of the promised land, to fulfill the promise that God gave to Abram. So he stuck it out, he was committed, and he interceded for the people. He petitioned God to continue to provide for them and to continue to bless him. And that all came through the relationship. He kept talking to God. Kept letting God know exactly what was going on and waiting for God's response. Not acting in his own strength, but waiting for God to tell him how to act. This theme of obedience and sort of trust in God is really prominent through Exodus, and it's highlighted by the one time that Moses isn't obedient. So we read in Numbers, I think might be Numbers 20. In Exodus, Moses was asked to strike the rock to have water come out and provide water for the Israelites. Yet in Numbers, we read another account where God told Moses to speak to the rock. Speak to the rock and it will bring forth water. Yet in his anger, he struck the rock twice and disobeyed God. And he was punished for that. He wouldn't get to enter the promised land because of that act. So Moses is all about obedience. And I know we're not Moses. We're not living a few thousand years ago. We're not in a slave culture. We're not being called to lead a nation of slaves to another land. But I really relate to some of the stuff in Moses. I've got a past. I've got things I'm not proud of. There's times I'd rather hide away in exile. Things I have run away from or I'd like to run away from. I really relate to being hesitant when I think God's calling me to something, or he's sort of laying out some of the places for me to go, and I'm making up all the excuses I possibly can. It's like, it shouldn't be me because I'm not this, or that person's going to do it better, or what if we did it a slightly different way, God? You're strategizing with them and coming up with my better plan, which is not better. But I can really relate to Moses. What I find is, and what I'm encouraged by Moses is when there's just a simple response to God. When it's listening to God, when it's obeying what he says, when it's continuing to build and develop that relationship with him. That's when God works. Moses was weak and broken. I'm weak and broken. You're weak and broken too. But our God is powerful. He set things in motion. He is working through all people to bring about his will. And we get invited just to step into it and say, yes, Lord, here I am. Use me. Nothing to do with our strength. Yes, he's gifted us, but there are impossible circumstances that we can't get through. It is only God who will lead us through. It's God who will provide that miracle to get us through. So, this is the start of a year. And as we look back into our Old Testament characters, we're going to see the way God has worked in the past. But I want to encourage you to keep looking at how God continues to work today. What is he calling you into? Where is he asking you to be obedient? Maybe where is he asking you to persevere? Is there something that's really difficult in your life right now? You need provision. You need God to move, to sort out a situation, and he's just asking you to bring it to him and to persevere. We've all got challenges. We've all got things going on in our life. But there's an invitation to remain resilient, remain persistent, and ultimately just to trust in God. A God who is holy, who is set apart. In Hebrews and Peter, it talks about the children of God, even the Gentile Christians, so Christians being called into that holy nation. We've received the promises that were promised to Israel. We've been grafted in. And we're waiting on Jesus' return. We're waiting on the promise where he will restore and redeem absolutely everything. And it's going to be wonderful. But we've got to journey through the challenges now. So for the skeptic, for the person who doesn't yet believe that God is all-powerful, is trying to grapple with how can God be both personal and holy? There's a disconnect there. I just want to invite you, if he's personal, you can ask him. So if you don't know if he can be the all-powerful God and personal, just ask him and see what he does. See how he responds to you. He might not meet you in a burning bush, but I'm pretty confident he will meet you through people and through circumstance in a way that is undeniable for you. For the person who has a past, they've got things that they're not proud of. There's things that they've run away from. God is a redeeming God. He's a God who can use anyone. He uses us in spite of our weaknesses. God is faithful. For the person who's struggling with overwhelm, struggling with lots just going on in their life, with a particular relationship, with something that just seems so insurmountable, like that sea before you just can't get through, and you're stuck between an army and the sea. God is powerful. He can move. He has moved. And for me, I keep reminding myself that, God moved a month ago or a year ago, and I'm like the Israelite people. I quickly forget. So don't forget what God has done in the past. Remember how he's been faithful to you, and use that as hope to move forward. And for the person who life is going pretty well for, you're like, great, I'm in relationship with God, and I feel like he's blessing me and he's encouraging me. I just encourage you to keep being obedient. Keep saying yes to Jesus and be attentive to what he's saying. Like Moses, we can see, he did it that way before. I struck the rock and water came out. So I'm going to do that again. But no, listen to what God is doing, because he might be doing something a little bit different. He might be asking you to speak to the rock to bring forth the water. So my response is on the screen there. What I'd like to do is I've just copied it from Moses, and you can copy it too. It's to simply keep going with God, keep talking to him, keep praying, keep being obedient. Obedience is a choice I need to make every day, because naturally I'm going to fall into doing things my way. So this year, it's something I want to try to do, is just listen to God and be obedient. I say that every year, and every day it's an important decision for me to keep making. And finally, to remain committed. To persevere through the tough stuff as it comes. Not to get overwhelmed, but to see that God is bigger than this, and he is working, and he has worked, and he can wait 400 years to deliver a people. It's not my plan, it's God's plan. So I can trust in him. He is the perfect, holy God, the one who is above every other name. And it all starts, this process all starts with encountering God. It all starts with fixing our eyes on him, on recognizing that he is holy. That's what Moses did. So this is holy ground. Take off your sandals. Moses hid his face from fear. And we recognize that we need to be dependent on God. We recognize that he is the one who gets to tell us what to do, because he is the creator, but also because he loves us and he has the best in store for us in the end with the return of Jesus.